Boyfriend left me to die in the fire while saving his goddess. After being consumed by the flames, I was reborn to the day he confessed to me. Amid the crowd's cheers, I rejected him. I walked towards the boy with a lonely gaze in the crowd. But he gripped my hand tightly, his voice trembling. Didn't you say you'd marry me when we grew up? Chapter 1. Say yes, say yes. When I opened my eyes, David was holding a large bouquet of roses, smiling at me. But memories of being engulfed by fire surged in my mind. I remembered David resolutely carrying his goddess Emily away. He left decisively, without even a glance at me. In despair, I prayed to heaven, if I had another chance, I would definitely not choose him. I would even stay as far away from him as possible. Suddenly, a voice sounded, "Are you sure?" I was resolute, yes. Unexpectedly, I really returned to the day David confessed to me. Chapter 2. David and I were childhood sweethearts. Everyone knew I liked him. At the beginning of senior year, he confessed to me after evening self-study. That day, I thought we were finally breaking the barrier of mutual affection. Later, I found out that his confession was just to spite Emily. Even in college and after graduation, he was entangled with Emily. In every choice between two, I was always the one abandoned. I finally woke up and filed for divorce, but Emily came to provoke me. Until the fire happened. I didn't wait for rescue but saw David carrying Emily away without looking back. At that moment, my heart died completely. So, this time, amid the crowd's cheers, I rejected him. The lively playground suddenly fell silent. Well, in the previous life, I was always David's shadow. Following him, caring for him, bringing him breakfast, delivering water during PE, preparing his stationery, organizing his test papers, and waiting to go home together after evening study. Everyone knew I liked him. David's face darkened. "Lucy, say that again?" I sneered at him. "Even if I said it 100 times, it's still the same. David, I don't want to be your girlfriend, I don't like you. I'm in my senior year, I just want to study hard." After saying this, the crowd gasped. People whispered, "I'd believe I'm the emperor before believing Lucy doesn't like David. Maybe it's a trick to attract him." But being rejected publicly, David's face must be turning black with anger. Not wanting to be the center of attention, I turned to leave, but David grabbed my wrist, suppressing his anger. "Lucy, what are you crazy about?" Crazy? Isn't that something he should ask himself? When Emily came to me, she said he confessed to me only because he was angry with her. After they had a Cold War, Emily flirted with a guy in their class, making David angry enough to confess to me. Because he was sure I liked him and wouldn't reject him. He wanted to make Emily relent, so he used my feelings. I looked at my reddening wrist, pried his fingers off one by one, and pointed to the person standing at the back of the crowd. "Don't you like her? You both quarrel and use me as a pawn. Do I deserve to be a fool?" Chapter 3. In an instant, David froze. He watched Emily's departing figure, then looked at me, with a warning. "Lucy, have you had enough? Why involve others in our matters? I'm causing trouble." This protective stance confirmed the truth of the matter. I shook off his hand, looking at him word by word. "David, don't you understand human language?" I said, "I don't like you." He sneered, "If you don't like me, then who do you like?" 17 years of feelings gave him enough confidence to believe I couldn't do without him. But having finally returned to senior year, I only wanted to live for myself. I walked past David to the boy with a lonely gaze. That was the top student, Ivan. Standing beside him, I said to David, "I like studying. I want to get into H University." Then I turned to Ivan. "Study God, I might need to ask you for guidance often from now on." Chapter 4. After rejecting David, we entered a Cold War. Everyone guessed I wouldn't last a day without going to him, even setting bets. But I just smiled. And made a bet myself. Forever. No way, did Lucy take the wrong medicine? David is furious. Lucy didn't bring him breakfast, he's already thrown several tantrums during morning reading. This had nothing to do with me. Now, I just wanted to study, I only wished he wouldn't disturb me. Actually, I did well in high school, but after being with David in senior year, I followed his wish to stay local for college. Later I found out, it was because Emily was here. He did it on purpose. Opening my backpack, I found the set of stationery I prepared for David. As I took it out, David's deskmate spoke. I knew it, she couldn't last a morning. David, looking smug, seemed to expect me to present it to him. I just took everything out and turned to give it to my deskmate Ivan. Top student, consider this an early bribe, I'll have many things to ask of you. Actually, in the last life, Ivan and I didn't interact much, he was always studying. I occasionally asked him questions. But since I was sure I could get into the local college easily, I didn't try hard later on. However, I vaguely remembered him asking me where I wanted to go. At that time, my mind was full of David. So I pointed in David's direction. Wherever he goes, I'll go. Ivan didn't say much. Now, as I offered the stationery, he looked up at me. His cool gaze carried some curiosity. I smiled calmly. If you don't like it, I'll throw it away. David's face turned extremely ugly upon hearing that. He even kicked the table leg hard. Unexpectedly, Ivan simply said thank you and accepted it. Chapter 5. After deciding to focus on studying and staying away from both of them, I realized how far I was from my target university. But I loved the feeling of battling with math until late at night, feeling exhausted yet exhilarated. I loved the enlightening discussions with top students about different solutions to a problem. It turned out that a life not centered around David was so interesting. Soon, the senior year's opening ceremony arrived. In the previous life, I was pushed onto the stage to confess to David. What did I say? Oh, I said, our beautiful youth should be without regrets. If you like someone, you should express it. I am confident that David and I will get into the same university, and we should enjoy our school days to the fullest. The entire school was shocked, and even my parents were called in. Thinking back now, I want to punch my old love-struck self. This time, I quietly stayed in the crowd, silently memorizing words, trying to lower my presence. But during the free speech time, a girl from my class suddenly suggested, Lucy, didn't you study broadcasting? Say a few words on behalf of the class. Some people echoed. Ridiculous, does she want to confess to David in public and embarrass herself? Didn't she reject David? Now she wants to make up and confess her feelings? I bet she doesn't dare, ha ha ha. Yeah, she definitely won't dare. How annoying, she bet she wouldn't reconcile, but she's just a doormat. I took a deep breath, the inevitable had come. They all wanted to see me make a fool of myself, which I understood, given that I used to revolve around David. 17 years of being a tagalong, even David thought I was just throwing a tantrum this time. But only I knew how precious this rebirth was. I turned to look at David, not far behind me. Our eyes met. He, wearing the school uniform, was looking proud, slightly tilting his head, seemingly waiting for me to go on stage and make up to him, to erase the embarrassment of my recent rejection. In my peripheral vision, I also saw Ivan's gaze. For some reason, I felt a bit guilty. With the teacher's encouragement, I stood up and walked step by step to the podium. Behind me were whispers. If Lucy doesn't confess to David today, I'll look down on her. David's the man, you can't spoil women. Looking at the crowd below, I adjusted the microphone and confidently began. Respected teachers, dear classmates, good morning. I am Lucy from Class 1, Grade 12. In this early September with the fragrance of osmanthus, at the beginning of our senior year, bearing the hopes of our teachers and carrying our dreams, facing the dawn of the college entrance exam, I solemnly swear, a sharp sword comes from honing, the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from bitter cold. I will do my best and not waste my youth. I hope all of you will persevere, strive for a year, and set sail for your dreams. I was met with applause. In the previous life, after my confession, I was met with whistles, laughter, and booing. I finally changed the course of events. But I didn't expect that after the meeting, David would block me. Lucy, let's talk. Chapter 6. We have nothing to talk about. I didn't even give him an extra glance. I walked straight towards the classroom. David caught up, grabbed me, and pulled me to the side of the playground despite my resistance. "What's wrong with you?" He frowned, questioning me. I wasn't weak either, shaking off his hand. "How many times do I have to say it for you to understand? I just want to study." Saying that, I wanted to leave. He raised his hand to stop me, eyes full of disbelief. "You can study, but why not bring me breakfast? Why give my stuff to someone else? Why not wait for me to go home together at night? Why refuse?" He didn't finish the last sentence. I finished it for him. "Why can't I refuse you?" He was furious, gritting his teeth to control his emotions. Yeah. In the past, it was always him rejecting me. He was always high and mighty, caring only about his feelings. He enjoyed my special treatment, yet gave all his love to someone else. For me, just a small sweet gesture from him was enough to make me happy. I was so stupid before. So stupid that it seemed all the men in the world were dead, leaving only him. After a moment of silence, David finally said, "Lucy, you weren't like this before." I looked at him. "David, I was blind before to like you. You and your Emily can fly off together and stop buzzing around me like a fly." I left. Behind me, I heard David's low growl, "Fine, Lucy, don't regret it." Chapter 7. After the unpleasant incident on the playground, every morning, Emily would cross 3 floors to bring David breakfast. She would also prepare drinks for him during breaks. Even during PE class, she would wipe his sweat and feed him water while he played basketball. Soon, everyone was saying they were a couple. And David didn't deny it. But some busybodies still came to ask me what I thought. I was fighting with a big physics problem and just replied indifferently, "Great, let them stay together and stop bothering others." Unable to solve the problem, I poked Ivan beside me with a pen. Then I pushed the paper over. "I've only written one step, can't figure out the rest." Ivan just glanced at the problem and picked up his pen. Seeing him about to explain, I quickly took out my notebook and leaned over. I seemed to see a fleeting smile on his lips. "For this problem, you need to use this formula. Let's start by analyzing the question." I must say, Ivan truly deserved to be called a top student. Difficult problems became simple and understandable when he explained them. In a few words, he made it all clear. I took the opportunity to hand over my mistake notebook. "Can you look at these? I understand some, but can't find the pattern." He took the notebook from me, our fingers touched. His hands were so cool. I quickly withdrew my hand. He focused seriously on the problems I had copied down. Suddenly, I recalled how foolish I had been before, having such a great study buddy right next to me, yet only thinking about romance. What a fool. When he was about to speak, I moved closer to him, but suddenly a basketball flew towards me. The next second, my nose was in excruciating pain, and warm liquid started to flow down. I didn't have time to see who the culprit was before David rushed over, holding my head up. He quickly pulled out a tissue from his bag and stuffed it onto my nose. His voice was filled with urgency. "Does it hurt?" Then he pulled me towards the bathroom. I broke free from his hand, coldly looking at him. "David, are you crazy?" Chapter 8. I picked up the basketball at my feet and threw it at him hard. He didn't move, looking down at me, then glanced at Ivan beside me, and sneered, "Lucy, is your affection so short-lived?" Short-lived? I almost laughed out of anger. In my past life, I revolved around him for over 20 years. When we got married, he cried and swore to be with me forever, never letting me suffer. I believed him time and time again, indulging him again and again. It was because he was involved in my entire life. I naively thought that growing old with him would be so romantic. But I overestimated him and underestimated my own feelings. My heart suddenly felt a bit sour. But I still faced his gaze directly. "David, everyone knows you're dating Emily. If you want to date, go ahead, why drag me into it?" My voice wasn't loud, but everyone in the classroom could hear. There were small laughs from the crowd. But David panicked, reaching out to grab my hand to explain, "I'm not dating her." I avoided him, turning sideways. "Oh, leading her on again? You're such a jerk." "I didn't. She came to me herself." Just as he finished speaking, there was a bang at the door. Emily stood there, her eyes red, and the drink she brought for David fell to her feet. She wiped her eyes and turned to run. I saw David clenching his fists. The next second, he ran after her. Chapter 9. After sitting down, Ivan pulled out a wet tissue from his bag and handed it to me. Do you want to go to the bathroom? I shook my head. No need. There were some bloodstains on my pants. It had dried, dark red spots. I took the tissue and carefully wiped, but it wouldn't come off. Strangely, I wasn't thinking about anything. But my eyes couldn't help but tear up, so I quickly lowered my head. Every time there was a choice, I was the one who got abandoned. Even in this new life, it still hurt. But I thought, maybe it's just a reflex from the 20-something Lucy. So I pinched my palm hard, feeling the intense pain. I silently chanted, 17-year-old Lucy, you must win this time. The next second, Ivan's clear voice came. These problems have many solutions, do you want to hear them? I quickly wiped my face with my hand, looked up, and smiled widely at him. Yes. That night, during self-study, Ivan pushed his physics notes in front of me. Maybe you can use this. I opened it, and inside were his neat and beautiful handwriting, summarizing each knowledge point. In the previous life, he got into H University. I heard he returned here after graduation. I don't know why. I wrote a note and handed it to him. Ivan, do you think if I start working hard now, I can get into H University? He unfolded the note, the warm white light casting fine shadows of his eyelashes on his face. Below his high nose, he smiled slightly and began to write. My heart pounded, afraid he would say, with your level, it's unlikely. But when I unfolded the note, there was only one word. Yes. Chapter 10. Maybe it was my strong desire to change my fate in this life, or maybe it was the affirmation from the top student. My fighting spirit was ignited. I started organizing notes for all subjects, going over knowledge points. I used to rely on my little cleverness, being half understood in many problems. Now, I started from the basics, chewing over the knowledge in the textbooks. Thanks to being Ivan's deskmate, I made full use of this top student resource. I even took the opportunity to add his contact information for better consultation on difficult problems. His social media updates were rare, but the only recurring one was a pot of sunflowers. Maybe that pot of sunflowers had a special meaning for him. Just like David used to subtly post gardenias on his social media. Later I understood, it represented Emily. It seemed Emily hadn't been bringing breakfast for David lately. But surprisingly, there was a bottle of yogurt and bread on my desk. I asked Ivan, is this yours? He shook his head. A girl behind me poked my back and whispered, I came early, David brought it. Ugh, after their Cold War, he's coming to me to find a sense of presence again. I didn't even turn to look at him, just walked to the back of the class and threw it in the trash. When I returned, David stretched out his foot to block me, his eyes hidden with anger. Lucy, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about. He pointed to the trash can. I bought that breakfast. Oh. Is that your attitude? I laughed. David, have you been possessed? It's just breakfast, what attitude should I have, kneel down and kowtow to you? His eyes widened in anger. Lucy, have you had enough? What will it take for you to talk to me? I crossed my arms and glanced at him, giving back his words from the previous life. Are you done? Can you find something to do? I'm very busy. Then I stepped over his foot and returned to my seat. David muttered, Fine, Lucy, you're something. Chapter 11. I was indeed something. When the monthly exam results came out, I had jumped from the middle of the class to the top 15. Of course, Ivan was still the best, steadily in first place, even far ahead of the others. I looked at the rankings, secretly thinking, if only I could one day be right behind him. So I worked even harder. I wished I could use 24 hours a day as 48. I even regretted that I wasted such good times in the past 2 years on David. What a waste of time. I stood by the honor roll for a while, then got up to leave, not realizing when Ivan had come to stand beside me. I pointed at the photo on the board. This photo turned out pretty well. For the past 2 years, he had been at the top of the list. He followed my gaze and nodded. He wasn't modest at all. On the way back to the classroom, he suddenly spoke, "Lucy. Yeah. Are you sure you want to apply to H University?" I looked up at him. The setting sun's glow fell on his shoulders, warming his white shirt. His gaze was sincere and bright, reflecting my image. Meeting his gaze, I nodded firmly, "Yes, Ivan, one day I will be right next to your name." Chapter 12. But I didn't expect Emily to come looking for me. In the previous life, I had no interactions with her throughout high school. In this life, I guess because I changed the story, some relationships changed as well. She blocked me during PE class, and I was afraid something would happen that I couldn't explain. I turned on my phone's recording function. She came up wanting to slap me. I quickly blocked her. I pushed her hand away, and she glared at me viciously, "Lucy, you're so despicable. You think playing these tricks will make David like you?" I laughed. "It seems your brain isn't fully developed, and your cerebellum isn't either. Why would I want his affection? How much is it worth?" "You. If you like him, go to him. Why take out your anger on me when you two argue? I'm not a trash can to recycle everything." I really didn't want to argue with her any longer. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my hand. "I'm telling you, David likes me. If you know what's good for you, stay away from him." I laughed. "Lady, if you're sick, go see a doctor. I don't care who David likes. Instead of bothering me, why not do a few more exercises to nourish your brain?" No wonder she and David are a pair, neither can understand what people say. I didn't want to waste words on her. Just as I reached the soccer field, Emily caught up and blocked me again. The next second, a soccer ball flew towards us. Luckily, she blocked my view, and the ball hit her directly. She fell to the ground, but since she had grabbed me, I also fell due to inertia. Not far away, David rushed over. "What happened?" Emily held her head, teary-eyed. "My head hurts and feels dizzy. Do I have a concussion?" Goodness, I really doubted her head was only for show. The ball hit her body, yet she claimed a concussion. Any medical student hearing this would want to make her a specimen. I sneered. But she clung to David's leg. "I just wanted to apologize to Lucy. Who knew she'd push me? I never meant to hurt her. I just wanted her to stop ignoring you. Don't be mad at her, okay?" Here we go again. I had seen this scene too many times in my past life. And every time I argued back, David would look at me coldly, telling me not to make trouble out of nothing. This time, I didn't speak. I propped myself up to stand, but David rushed to my side in a flash. He picked me up directly. "Where are you hurt? Let me see." This action shocked both Emily on the ground and me in his arms. He looked down at Emily, his tone devoid of warmth. "Why aren't you studying instead of bothering her?" Emily's tears flowed, looking pitifully at him. "David." He just frowned, not even glancing at her. "Didn't I make it clear last time? I don't like you. Stop looking for me. And if I find you disturbing Lucy's studies again, don't blame me for being rude." On the way back, I made David put me down. It was just a small scrape, no blood at all. But David stubbornly put a band-aid on it. He lowered his head, for the first time letting go of his pride, his voice pleading, "Lucy, since the basketball incident, I haven't been in touch with Emily. So, can you stop treating me like this?" Chapter 13. I always felt I had forgotten something in the fire in my previous life. But no matter how I tried, I couldn't remember. Still, I didn't want to have any entanglements with David. He brought me breakfast. I gave it to the guy in front of me. He brought snacks. I shared them with everyone before evening self-study. He prepared gifts for me. I returned them all. Our relationship seemed to have changed. He started repeating the things I used to do for him. But I still ignored him. To be precise, I didn't have time to deal with him. I was focused solely on my studies, constantly shortening the distance between Ivan and me. Because there's a saying, if you set a high goal, even if you don't reach it, you'll still be close. I printed this quote and stuck it on my desk. And I wrote with a black pen, "Be City, wait for me," with a big exclamation mark at the end. Ivan saw it and smiled. I tilted my head. "What, you think I'm childish?" He shook his head. "No." "Then why are you laughing?" Ivan didn't say anything but picked up a pen and added a line to the back of that quote. "Wait for me at H University." I wasn't sure if he wrote that for me or himself. But I still remember that autumn afternoon, the breeze lifting the curtains, creating ripples. The bright and cheerful boy in his school uniform, holding a pen, writing his dreams earnestly. We exchanged smiles. It turned out, during student days, one could have a tacit understanding and bond with someone over shared dreams. Chapter 14. Days passed quickly, and the midterm exam arrived as scheduled. This time, I made a little progress, ranking 10th. Even the class teacher noticed my progress and called me for a private talk in the office. Inside, Ivan was helping the teacher prepare some materials. The teacher said that each week, there would be 3 evening self-study sessions, with 2 periods each, dedicated to tutoring the top 5 students in the grade. The goal was to prepare students for admission to H University. He mentioned this to me because he saw my potential and hoped I could join that group. I nodded. "Okay, teacher, I will work hard." There was still some distance to go to reach the top 5. I reviewed my situation again. My weaknesses were in physics and biology. Physics had always been a tough subject for me, but that also meant there was a lot of room for improvement. As for biology, I disliked memorizing things, which ultimately meant my foundation was shaky. After leaving the office, I ran into Ivan, who had just come out too, in the hallway. On the way back to the classroom, he called out, "Lucy." I turned my head, and his eyebrows were relaxed, making him look less aloof. "I believe you can make it to the top 5. I was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "I believe in myself too. But right now, I still need to improve in physics and biology. I have to keep working hard." The sky was dim, the streetlights in the school were gradually lighting up, and the distant buildings were brightly lit like daylight. Ivan and I walked side by side on the way back to the classroom. Just as we reached the door, I heard Ivan's response, "Lucy, I'll help you." Chapter 15. No one could refuse the invitation of a top student. And Ivan really meant what he said. He helped me organize the key points in physics. He patiently explained the thought process behind each question to me. He constantly drew diagrams to create a visual sense for me. After a while, I felt that my approach to solving problems had indeed improved. As for biology, he implemented a rigorous training regimen, making me memorize everything. I protested, "Seriously, I didn't choose liberal arts because I don't like memorizing things." Ivan was stern. "No way." He was like a strict taskmaster. There was no choice, to avoid disturbing others. Every day before evening self-study started, he would stay by the field with me, making sure I memorized the assigned tasks. That day, while I was memorizing, snowflakes suddenly started falling from the sky. Under the light, they softly and gently fell, then melted in the palm of my hand. Many students were leaning against the windows, admiring and taking pictures. I looked at the snowflakes and asked, "Ivan, I want to go to H University, what about you?" His gaze stayed on my face for a moment, then he turned and caught a snowflake. "Me too." "Ivan, I will definitely get in." "I know." I lowered my head, feeling inexplicably sad. Thinking of all the events from my previous life felt like a dream. Such absurd things, no one could understand. I was very afraid that something unexpected would happen again in this life. Afraid that even if I started over, I still wouldn't be able to change my fate. I could only bear it alone, turning all the sadness into a stepping stone to move forward. Maybe noticing that I hadn't spoken for a while, Ivan sat beside me and softly said, "Lucy, if you're unhappy about anything, you can tell me." People were coming and going on the field, with snowflakes dancing above our heads. I looked up, biting my lip hard, afraid that tears would fall the next moment. I didn't want to give up, and I couldn't lose. "Ivan, do you want to make a bet with me?" His voice carried a hint of a smile. "Bet on what?" "Bet that I will catch up with you." As the last snowflake fell, I heard his response, "You will win." Chapter 16. Before the final exams, Ivan and I were called to the homeroom teacher's office for a talk. This final exam was also the first provincial mock exam. It was said that the results of the first mock exam would predict the college entrance exam results. So the homeroom teacher talked to the top 10 students, telling us not to be nervous and to treat it with a calm mind. Unexpectedly, as we came out, we ran into David and Emily. Emily, always eager to cause trouble, sneered, "Isn't this Ivan, the top science student?" "Oh, Lucy, after you stopped fawning over David, you went to fawn over the top student?" David's face turned ugly. Ivan wanted to say something, but I stopped him. I felt it wasn't worth wasting words with her. Unexpectedly, she continued to mock, "Holding hands now? Was David not good enough for you? Two-timing and enjoying both sides, do you have any shame?" I couldn't hold back. I wondered why I smelled something foul from afar. "Turns out you still haven't cured your bad breath? And you, the last place in the liberal arts class, did you even pass English? Here you are, spouting nonsense." Just as Emily was about to speak, David interrupted her. "Enough already?" She was inexplicably yelled at and immediately burst into tears. "David, you ungrateful jerk. I'm speaking for you, and this is how you treat me? Do you have any conscience?" So annoying. I didn't want to get entangled with them and pulled Ivan away to leave. David suddenly spoke up. "Ivan, can we talk?" I didn't know what they talked about. But after returning to the classroom, David's arrogance seemed to diminish. I leaned towards Ivan. "He didn't hit you, did he?" He shook his head. "Just talked." "What did you talk about?" "Man-to-man topics." "What kind of topics?" "You'll know after the college entrance exams." "Oh, playing mysterious now." Ivan handed me the freshly distributed physics test paper. "Feeling idle? Come on, explain the logic of this question to me." Chapter 17. Before entering the exam hall for the final exam, Ivan gave me a piece of candy. "Eat it, it will make you feel better. When you're in a good mood, you'll solve the problems easily." I held the candy. "Don't worry, you better do well too, or I'll surpass you." Ivan smiled and said nothing. After finishing the last subject, the rain cleared up, and the winter sun shone down, making everyone feel warm. David was waiting for me outside the classroom. "My mom said she hasn't seen you in a long time. Come home with me for a meal." I really didn't want to go. Sometimes I wondered if in my previous life, David and I hadn't gotten together. Could we still be friends? The answer is no. I can't be friends with someone I like. Just like now, I can't act as if nothing happened just because David hasn't had the chance to hurt me in this life. In the past, he took all my kindness for granted, using my feelings as a tool to spite Emily. I can't forgive him for that. So, the best I can do is to stay as far away from him as possible. I stepped back to a safe distance, shook my head, and said softly, "I'm not going. I need to buy some study materials." A flash of pain crossed David's eyes, and his voice was filled with confusion. "Lucy, tell me, what exactly did I do wrong? If I treated you badly before, I have changed. What else did I do wrong? Can you tell me? Can you stop looking at me like a stranger? If you really want to make amends, then stop bothering me." I walked past him. He stood in the hallway, his hair falling over his eyes. I don't know if it was my imagination, but I saw his eyes turn red. Chapter 18. When the final exam scores were announced, I was just in 5th place. Especially in my weak subject, physics, I had made significant progress. I took a picture of my results and sent it to Ivan. "Look, my scores have improved." He quickly replied, "Still need to improve." Ugh. After all, someone said they would catch up with me. Frightened, I quickly did 2 more sets of practice papers to calm myself down. During the winter break, to avoid unnecessary trouble, I locked myself at home and studied hard. I didn't even go to David's house for the New Year's visit, which we did every year. My mom was worried. "Sweetie, don't study so much that you turn stupid." She didn't understand that I didn't want to see David. Besides, studying had become an addiction. I wished I could spend all day at home. As usual, my parents were likely playing mahjong late into the night. As I wrote deep into the night, I looked out the window and saw it was snowing again. The snow was getting heavier, piling up thickly on the ground. I put on my down jacket, ready to build a snowman. I realized I had forgotten to wear a scarf only after I went outside. Oh well, I would go back inside soon anyway. I squatted down to make a big round ball, when suddenly, a pair of shoes appeared in front of me. Looking up, I saw it was David. He was holding a thermos. I glanced at him and continued working on the second snowball. I was worried no one would cook for you, so I brought you some food. I ignored him and continued making the second snowball. The cold wind blew into my nose, making me sneeze. The next second, David took off his scarf and tried to wrap it around me. I put up my hand to stop him, no need. His hand paused in midair, then he withdrew it and squatted down beside me as if nothing had happened. Let me help you. When I was very young, I loved having snowball fights and building snowmen with David. He always said the snowmen I made looked odd. While complaining, he never stopped helping. I took the opportunity to throw a snowball at his neck. At 16, when I tried it again, I suddenly realized he had grown much taller than me. I jumped up to playfully attack him, but he dodged, and I slipped, causing us both to fall into the snow. We both panted heavily, laughing uncontrollably. Back then, lying beside him, I thought, how great it would be if this could last forever. But on this day at 18, we were left speechless. For as long as I stayed in the snow, David stayed with me. Only when I pressed the rubber band as the snowman's mouth did I hear his trembling voice. I was momentarily blinded and got involved with Emily. But I never thought about being with her. Nothing ever happened between us. I don't like her. Believe it or not, Lucy, you are the most important person to me. We've been together for 18 years. Can't you stop rejecting me? Towards the end, his voice choked. You once said you would marry me when you grew up. One snowflake after another fell on David's head and body. Mountains grow old, but snow turns one's hair white. But I no longer cared. I tightened my hat and said in a normal tone, just think of it as me having changed. David, every second I spent with you makes me feel sick. I don't like you anymore, and this is the end for us. As I turned to leave, he grabbed me. Have you really fallen for Ivan? I shrugged and used the words he once said to me, if that's what you think, I can't help it. Chapter 19. That day, after I went upstairs, David remained standing below like a statue. I closed the window and continued memorizing my English vocabulary. During the new year, I received many greetings from friends. I responded to each one and continued working on practice papers. David sent me a picture of the New Year's gift I gave him last year, a large Lego set. I didn't reply to him. Just before midnight, Ivan sent me a message, Happy New Year. I was about to reply when another message appeared, I have a gift for you. 10 seconds later, a 49.2 MB file came through. It simply said, Physics. I opened it to find Ivan had reorganized all the high school physics knowledge points and classic problems. Well, I wasn't to be outdone, so I sent him my compilation of English knowledge points. Shocking. The secret to her 140 points in English is here. Ivan quickly called. Lucy. Yes. This time, you have to do well. You'll get into H University and have a brighter future. Ivan's voice had a unique magnetism of a young man. I smiled. Why are you saying this all of a sudden? Don't tell me you're scared because my English is better than yours? Yes, I'm scared. Scared of what? The air grew quiet. After a pause, I heard his answer, I'm afraid I won't be able to catch up to you. I laughed. Ivan, you will. Chapter 20. This winter break was short, and soon school started again. Because I ranked in the top 5, I finally got to enjoy individual tutoring sessions with the top students during evening self-study. The 5 of us absorbed the knowledge our teachers provided like sponges, filling ourselves up. Before each class, everyone discussed their dream university life with glowing eyes. Then came the 100-day pledge ceremony. This time, Ivan, as the student representative, led everyone in reciting the pledge. At the end, he said, I hope everyone can face the sun and move towards the light. I was slightly stunned. I remembered my self-introduction in the first year of high school. My name is Lucy, born facing the sun, like a sunflower always turning towards the light. I looked at the stage, and it seemed that Ivan's gaze also fell on my face from a distance. Endless papers and exams filled the daily life of the last semester of senior year. In the second mock exam, I rank third. In the third mock exam, I rank second. Not just second in the grade, but second in the whole city. This time, the gap between Ivan's and my scores further narrowed. Just as I was about to boast, he pressed me to take out my physics paper and carefully analyze my mistakes. I can't mess with a perfect scorer. What could I do? I listened obediently, corrected my mistakes, and continued practicing similar questions repeatedly. A few days before the college entrance exam, during the evening self-study just before class ended, Ivan suddenly called out to me, "Lucy." "What?" "You need to do your best in the college entrance exam." I smiled. "Of course I will." I had prayed to heaven for this chance to do it over. How could I not cherish it? "Yeah, if you have any problems, make sure to tell me." "Okay. If you need any help, come to me." "Understood." And what?" I turned my head. He smiled, shook his head, and his eyes were clear and bright. "The city is beautiful." "I know." Then he took out a safety talisman from his bag and placed it on my desk. "I got this on the second day of the Lunar New Year, hoping it would bring you good luck." I picked it up. "Why are you giving it to me now?" "It's not too late." "Thank you." After that, the only sound was our pens moving across paper. I turned my head and looked at him. The warm light in the classroom coated his hair with a layer of gold, making him appear gentle. "Ivan," I called him. "Yes?" "See you in B City." "Okay." Chapter 21. I was fully prepared. But on the way to the exam, someone stopped me. A few thugs blocked my path. I frowned and tried to walk around them. They laughed and blocked me again. One with red hair sneered, "Oh, the top student is going to the college entrance exam." It was clear they were here for me. I thought I hadn't offended anyone in the past year of daily studying. There was only one person who could send them. "Did Emily send you?" "Who sent us is not important. We just want to give you a lesson. Today's the college entrance exam. Can we deal with this after the exam?" The thugs laughed as if watching a joke. "After the exam will be too late. Little girl, if you come with us willingly, we won't hurt you. But if you resist, we won't be gentle with your delicate skin." They laughed maliciously. I realized that fighting was not an option. Their goal was to keep me from the exam. But after all my hard work, how could I miss it? I was about to press the emergency call button in my pocket when David's voice came from behind, ganging up to bully a little girl. "What kind of men are you?" Red Hair snorted, "I advise you not to meddle." Seeing them ready to fight, outnumbering us, I pulled David, "Run for it." But before we could react, Red Hair charged at us. David protected me behind him. "You run." Then he started fighting them. I seized the opportunity to run out and bumped into Ivan at the intersection. He quickly called the police. Fortunately, because the college entrance exam is a big deal, there were many police officers maintaining order on the streets. After explaining the situation, I asked them to rescue David. With only 5 minutes left before the exam started, the police escorted us to the school. Before going in, Ivan handed me a candy and said, "Lucy, good luck." Thinking of my goal to go to B City, I nodded. 2 days passed like a dream. I only remembered the clear blue sky, the sound of cicadas, and the light filtering through the leaves. Thankfully, David was only 10 minutes late for the first subject and still got in. Fortunately, he didn't miss the exam. Because I didn't want to owe him a favor. However, after an investigation, nothing was found. Those thugs were only given a verbal warning for causing trouble. But I knew Emily was behind it. Chapter 22. In the evening, our class organized a party. Coincidentally, Emily's class was at the same place. I walked over with a glass of wine. Then I poured it over her head. She screamed. I played the recording from before in front of everyone. When the words "Lucy, you are so cheap" played, her face turned pale immediately. I grabbed her chin. "Emily, you sent people to block me so I couldn't take the college entrance exam. We need to have a good talk about this." A trace of panic flashed in her eyes. I guessed right. But she suddenly shouted, "Lucy, you lunatic. If you have the guts, call the police." I was indeed a lunatic. Given a second chance at life, I had nothing left to lose or care about. I smiled at her classmates. This is a personal matter, we need to settle it. Then I grabbed her hand to drag her to an empty room. Halfway there, David came over. I looked up, move aside. Emily, like she had found a savior, clutched David's sleeve. David, it wasn't me. Please deal with this bitch Lucy. Lucy. David spoke. I looked at him, playing the hero again, huh? But then he said, I'll handle this. Don't dirty your hands. I was stunned. Then, despite Emily's screams, he covered her mouth and dragged her to a place without cameras. I had no mood to continue the party and sat on a chair. Suddenly, it all seemed so meaningless. I didn't understand why David had changed so much in this life. But it was all too late. I touched the area over my heart. Did I hate him? I think I did. I hated him for trampling on my love, making me pay with my life for my own lack of clarity. Did I love him? Maybe in the last life, but it was all burned away by that sudden fire. My throat felt dry, and I desperately wanted to drink something. A bottle of water appeared before me. It was Ivan. For some reason, I felt guilty. He must have seen what just happened. Would he think I wrongfully accused someone? After all, we both reported to the police that day, and we both knew the outcome. I looked up at him. Do you think I'm very malicious? He shook his head, walked closer, and sat beside me. Under the fluorescent light, his eyes were still cool and clear. Feeling better? For a moment, I was dumbfounded, then quickly turned my head and nodded, then shook my head. Revenge didn't feel as satisfying as I had imagined. He took a bottle of yogurt from his bag, opened it, and handed it to me. Try this. I took a sip and chuckled. Ivan, you really don't know how to make a girl feel better. I saw his face turn red, even the tips of his ears were red. After a while, he said, then teach me. Chapter 23. The party had to continue. I didn't know how David handled it. Anyway, I didn't see Emily for the rest of the night, and David acted strangely after he returned. He kept looking at me with a mix of emotions I couldn't decipher. It seemed like he had aged overnight. Amidst the various toasts from classmates, he walked up to me with a glass of wine, and then a few tears fell. He said, I'm sorry, Lucy. It's all in the past, David. Let's end our entanglement here. I really didn't want to be trapped in the same painful relationship as the last life. I just wanted to stay away from people who made me uncomfortable. From now on, never to meet again, would be best. But David still dragged me into an empty room. In the dim space, only our breathing could be heard. After a moment of silence, David looked at my stomach, his eyes turning red. I heard him ask in a suppressed voice, Lucy, did we have a child? I was stunned, looking at him as he painfully closed his eyes. So, it was because I hurt you so much before that you became like this. So, he was reborn too. Finally, I remembered what I had forgotten. Why Emily came to my door that day. It was because I ran into her at the hospital. I was pregnant. The prenatal checkup report showed I was already 6 weeks along, and the baby had a heartbeat. Her face turned pale instantly. I was full of excitement, planning to tell David the good news after work, but instead, I got Emily. If we both end up in a dire situation, who do you think he would choose? Like the final straw that broke the camel's back, I finally woke up and decided to divorce. But I never expected a sudden fire to break out. The fire was so strange. Before being engulfed by the flames, I waved that piece of paper, calling out David's name, unwilling to give up. But he couldn't hear. Because he never looked back. How did I feel at that moment? There seemed to be no feeling at all. Not even a single tear fell. But now, my vision blurred instantly. I gently touched my stomach. I never cried. Not when I was abandoned countless times. Not when he didn't come to save me and the baby. Not even when I was reborn. But now, I cried. Not for myself, but for the little one who had not yet been born. David tried to reach out and touch me, but I avoided him. Don't touch me. You make me sick. He stood there, his thin figure looking instantly aged. He choked out, Lucy, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But David, it was 2 lives lost. I grabbed his collar tightly, my voice trembling, David, I will never forgive you. I know. He squatted down, clutching his hair. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Like someone who had lost a loved one. After a while, he raised his head, his eyes bloodshot, reaching out to touch my hand. I was a real bastard before, Lucy. I'm sorry to you and the baby. It seemed he could only say sorry. But how could it not matter? Whether you believe it or not, I saved her because she was closer to the exit. I thought I'd quickly carry her out and come back for you, so I didn't turn around. No, David, if I were the most important person to you, you wouldn't have anyone else in your eyes. He looked like I had hit a sore spot, his body trembling, looking at me in despair and pain. Finally, as if making some decision, he said, "Can I have one last hug?" I took a few steps back and shook my head. I don't think that's necessary. As I left, I heard his voice as if it came from far away. Lucy, I will give you and our child an explanation. Chapter 24. But it's too late. I don't care anymore. After the party ended, I was drunk and wobbly, feeling so miserable. It was like something was pounding heavily on my heart, making it hard to breathe. Ivan held my hand, his eyes full of tenderness. If you feel sad, just cry it out. Tears fell one by one. Falling on his hand. Falling on the ground. And spreading instantly. I lowered my head, desperately trying to control myself. I thought I had already cried out all my tears earlier, but I hadn't. They still fell uncontrollably. In the summer night's breeze, Ivan gently hugged me, pulling me into his arms. The pleasant scent of a young man instantly surrounded me. Lucy, it's over. I bit his shoulder hard, not letting myself make a sound. He gently patted my back, his tone both gentle and firm. We will all have a better future. Chapter 25. I saw David for the last time. He called me from downstairs. I leaned out of the window. He was wearing a blue t-shirt, looking fresh and bright, completely different from that night. It reminded me of when he used to wait for me downstairs to go to school together in middle school. Just like our younger days. I was about to close the window. David waved at me and smiled. Goodbye, Lucy. I didn't realize at that ordinary afternoon that this goodbye was final. A sudden fire broke out in Shangya community. When the firefighters arrived, the two people inside had no vital signs. It is reported that the two were candidates for this year's college entrance examination. The specific situation is under investigation by relevant departments. That day, the exam results came out. And David and Emily died in that fire. When I went to David's funeral, his parents handed me a box. I opened it, and there was a photo inside. It was a picture of David and me alone at our middle school graduation. I was smiling happily, while he had a grumpy expression. There was a line on the back, written by me, Lucy will be like a sunflower, being David's little son. There was also a black hair tie, the one I had left on the snowman that snowy night. And a letter from David to me. Lucy, I'm sorry. I was a bastard. I didn't know I treated you so badly in the past life. I really wanted to kill myself. I didn't actually dislike you, on the contrary, I loved you. I just couldn't tell if it was love or habit until Emily appeared. She was different from you, and I thought I liked her, but I didn't want to lose you either. I admit I was scum. Thinking about what I did to you in the past, I wanted to go back and beat that David up. That day, Ivan asked me if I could make you happy, if I made you better. I didn't. I only made you hysterical. He said, if I wanted to make you happy, I should clear all obstacles for you. That's when I realized he did as much as I did. He even found someone to teach Emily a lesson and warned her not to come to you. I didn't know any of this. He seemed so cold, with only studies in his eyes, but he had such a ruthless look. I thought this time it was because of Emily, so I stayed away from her early on, hoping to get your attention again. But you were only indifferent to me. It hurt more than a knife. Until that party, when I remembered everything, I realized we really got married in the last life. If the 18-year-old David knew, he would be overjoyed, but you died in that fire because of me. That fire in the last life was Emily's doing, so let me do something for you this life. I really wish the 18-year-old David had died, so there wouldn't be a 25-year-old David to hurt you. If you're reading this letter, it means I succeeded. Lucy, this life, you must be happy, don't remember me. If there's a next life, I'll personally atone to you, don't push me away, okay? And, in this life, the 18-year-old David loves Lucy. Chapter 26. When I came out, Ivan was there to pick me up. The sunlight was so dazzling that I couldn't open my eyes. If you feel uncomfortable, you can lean on my shoulder. Want to cry? No. Just a sense of melancholy. In the last life, I paid the price for my persistence. In this life, David atoned with his life. To start over, this was the ending. It was an outcome I hadn't anticipated. That day, Ivan and I walked around the lake, circle after circle. I didn't speak, and he just accompanied me. Until the stars shone in the sky. And his eyes remained bright. The new school term came in no time, and Ivan and I boarded the same flight. On the plane, I asked him, Ivan, why did you apply to H University? Because you wanted to. Why do you like sunflowers? I remember at the beginning of school, a student went up to introduce herself. She said, my name is Lucy, welcoming the sunrise, just like a sunflower, always facing the light. Ivan, have you had a crush on me since the first year? Yes, so, will you give me a chance to make it official? Much later, I found out that the connection between Ivan and me had already existed in the previous life. It was like a cycle. In this life, because I said I wanted to apply to H University, Ivan did too. In the last life, Ivan applied to H University because I had said I wanted to go there in this life. I smiled, holding his hand, then in the future, please take care of me.
Ivan's side story. What will you use in exchange? I'll use my soul. Ivan, you need to understand that the dead can't come back to life. I know, so I hope for a chance to start over. If you start over, can you guarantee Lucy won't repeat the same mistakes? I don't know. I just hope she can live well again, even if it means sacrificing my life. What if the result is the same? Will you regret it? No, I will never regret it. On the day we were reborn, when David confessed to her, she walked past the crowd towards me. I thought, Ivan, no matter the outcome, it was worth it.